I'm delighted to demonstrate sampling methods and the differences between samples and populations in this video. First of all, I would like to draw a difference to discuss the differences between samples and populations. A population is a group of people, pretty much like this group, that you want to investigate. For example, all learners of English who are in a certain country, or all Singaporean secondary school students. So this becomes your population. Now from this population, you need to draw a sample. So those observations that you make from the population become your sample. Why do we do sampling? Because it's a lot more convenient to have multiple observations from the population rather than to go around and investigate everybody in that population, because this is not very practical under many circumstances unless you have a huge amount of budget. So samples are a number of people or observations who or which have been drawn from a population through different approaches. The sample must be representative of the population. If it's not representative, the results that you obtain from the sample cannot be extrapolated to the population. So the results or your findings do not have generalizability. So what do we do in order to improve the generalizability of your findings? That is, how can we ascertain that your sample is representative of this larger population? Well, that's where the idea of sampling techniques comes into the picture. There are different sampling techniques. In this slide, I have presented 5 of them here. I think they're the most commonly used sampling techniques. I'm going to present them in this order. First, I will discuss the simple random sampling. Then number 2 is stratified sampling or stratified random sampling, followed by cluster sampling, then systematic sampling, and finally convenience sampling. It's important to note that the sample's representativeness of the population arguably decreases as you move from number 1 to number 5. But it might not always be so. So I'm going to explain further in the following slides to see what I mean by that. First of all, a random sampling technique is a methodology in which each sample in the population has an equal probability of being chosen. Okay, so let's say you are this person here, and there is a person who is far away from you in the population. You have the same chance or probability of being chosen as a sample as this person has and as anybody else has in this sample. And that's what makes it a random kind of sampling. In order to do random sampling, the first thing you need to do is defining your population. For example, my population might be English learners who are based in China, or Chinese as a second language learners who are in Singapore or who are in China, or who live in Malaysia. For example, some overseas students who are studying in Malaysia and are interested to learn Mandarin or Chinese. After this, we need to define a sampling frame. And I would like to explain this a little bit because we hardly define this in second language research, but I think it's a useful concept. A sampling frame is a group of potential subjects from which you draw your sample. A sampling frame will be here, right? It stands between your population and your sample, like that. So from the population, you choose a sampling frame, and then from the sampling frame, you choose your sample. So this will be what you want. A sampling frame is useful because due to practicality reasons, we don't always have access to the entire population. Or if we do, we can't really do a very good random sampling because we don't have budgets. That's the question of practicality. So it's not plausible to randomly select a large number of people. Therefore, we can confine our research population to a sampling frame of people or students who are enrolled at our university or 2 universities. So that becomes our sampling frame. Of course, this will influence the representativeness of your sample. But under these circumstances, and due to the practicality issues, I think this is perhaps one of the best strategies that we can adopt in our research. After doing this, we create a list of members. Hopefully we can get a list of members from somewhere. For example, from some administration offices at our university or elsewhere. If we have the list of the members, it will be easy to assign numbers to those members. Then we should assign numbers. For example, we have a list of 200 students, then the numbers will move from 1 to 200. Following this, we can choose a sample size because we need to look at the list and see how large that list is. We might decide that the entire list is going to be invited to my study. So that's one way of doing it. Or you might say from this sample, from this list, I'm going to choose a sample of 100 people. That becomes my sample size. So n equals 100. This sample of 100 people should be drawn randomly using a kind of, for example, software package like SPSS or other software packages which can help you do that kind of random selection. If random selection is not a possibility, or if you think it doesn't work for you due to some reasons, which I will explain, a stratified random sampling is another option for you. In a stratified random sampling, you divide the population, let's say this is your population, into n separate strata. So this is stratum 1. This is actually stratum. It shouldn't be strata. Stratum 1, stratum 2, and stratum 3. Note that members of each stratum have the same features. For example, if just let's pretend that we only have 2 groups, 2 gender groups. Group 1, and let me just choose a different color here. Group 2. So this is male or female or male, doesn't really matter. Let's pretend that we don't have this for a minute. Just ignore this, please. What happens is all people in this subsample, or this in this stratum, are all males or females. Similarly, in this stratum, people should have the same feature. They are either all males or all females. Why do we do this? Because this is especially important when the number of subjects in each strata is not equal across those strata. So then everybody here will be assigned the same chance of being selected in our sample. And same here, and same here. Another example would be that you have 3 classes of socioeconomic backgrounds, socioeconomic status. This is class 1, whatever that class is. This is class 2, and this is class 3. And then you'll have 3 strata. From each of these strata, you will select a representative number of people. Representative to the extent that you do the random sampling on each of the strata. This is about stratified random sampling. The other kind of sampling, as I mentioned before, is cluster sampling. Look, in cluster sampling, basically, the population is divided into unequal clusters. For example, towns in a province, etc. Now let's pretend that these clusters are unequal. Forget about the fact that they have 3 numbers, 3 characters in each cluster. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clusters, and each of them could be representative of a town or a city in a province, etc. Then samples are randomly selected from the clusters. From this cluster, one sample will be randomly selected, and another one from this, and yet another one from this, and another one from this cluster, and finally one from this cluster. So you're going to have 5 different clusters with 5 randomly selected samples from each. And those 5 randomly selected samples will become our sample. I would like to elaborate further about this kind of technique because it can be divided into a 1-stage cluster sampling, or 2-stage or multiple stages. This is a very interesting figure from this website. By the way, if you have noticed, I have provided the list of all websites from which I've gotten the figures. In case you would like to check on your own, feel free to go ahead. I'll also provide the addresses, the website addresses at the bottom of this video. So in a multi-stage cluster sampling, in this figure, in a multi-stage cluster sampling, we have gone through 4 stages. For example, in a country as vast as the United States, we cannot investigate every person in every state. Therefore, let's say the question is whether English as a second language learners progress over time after they study English in America, progress over time, progress in their reading comprehension, for example, or speaking skills, or not. Your question is about ESL learners in America, and that's really a very large population. Therefore, it's recommended that in the first stage, you randomly select states. Here we have selected 7 states. In the second stage, you randomly select cities, towns, counties, and counties within each of those states. So this kind of sampling is going to be done on each of these states. So here, here, on this states, on this, and this states, and this one, and this state. So as you see, there are 7 states. Stage 3 includes the random selection of schools within each city or each town or each county, within this or this. Each of them actually. The same thing happens, and in the final stage you're going to randomly select students within each school here. It's going to be the final stage. This is quite more convenient and gives you a chance to have a representative sample, a relatively representative sample of a large population as large as a country like the United States of America. The other technique of sampling is called systematic sampling. A systematic sampling gives you a chance to choose every kth subject to be a part of the sample. For example, here we've got every third subject. So it's, let's say the one is missing in the figure, but 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and it goes on and on. There's going to be kth subject selected to be a part of the sample. In order to do this systematic kind of sampling, first of all, what we need to do is to create a list for every member of the population, and then choose the members at a predefined regular interval, which was 3 in this example. It doesn't have to be 3 always. It depends on your sample size and so on and so forth. Okay, and the last type of of sampling is called convenience sampling. It's called convenience because samples come from the most available group, not necessarily the representative group. If this is your population, the most available group, this is you, the researcher, right? This person with a circle around you. The most available population sample around you are these guys, these 3. So it's convenient really to ask them to participate in your study. But then what about these people who are far away from you and are not available? They will not get a chance to be a part of the sample. And the inclusion or exclusion of these people might have a significant impact on your results. You might totally get a different profile in your research, and that might not be generalizable to the sample, to the population from which the sample has been drawn. Therefore, one of the limitations of this kind of research is the fact that there is a higher probability of getting a biased sample. And therefore we must make sure that we do not overclaim our findings when we have got a convenience sampling. There are 2 things that are recommended to be done in research, but honestly I haven't seen this much in published research in second language learning and even language assessment. I myself am guilty of at least one of them. The first one is describe the sample very carefully so that the reader will know how generalizable your results are. So description as much as you can. And also, under the limitation of the study, do make sure to acknowledge the limitation in the form of a sentence like this. The findings are true for the sample of the study and might hold in a general population. Actually, there's a little bit of typo here. I should have written might not hold. Okay, that's just a correction. Might not hold in a general population. Further studies should investigate whether the results can extrapolate to a population. A sentence similar to this would be useful, so that your reviewers and also your readers will know how much your sample, your results are generalizable to a population. And future researchers are also aware that there is a limitation in your study that they can address. Well, that's the end of this video. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.